All right, here's our project for today. We've got a Cat 559 loader, and we actually did a job on this a couple of years, maybe a year or two ago, fixing that crack. And we've got, the owner noticed that this weld right here is cracked on both sides. So we're gonna get backed up here, get set up. Got a nice little pile of wood right here to work off of. Get the truck in here, see if we can get it fixed up. We're gonna arc gouge this crack, so we'll make sure we get all this area here where sparks can get down into any areas where there's grease and, you know, some bark and stuff that would definitely catch fire. We're gonna make sure that we get all that covered, but we're not dropping any fire in there. All right, so I went down it with the gouger. My main focus was to penetrate all the way through the material and get to the bottom of the crack. And this bevel, this groove right here is just a little bit too tight. The bevels are too steep to really get a good weld in there. So the next step, I'm gonna go in there with the arc gouger and I'm gonna lay probably just this bottom one back. There's really no need to do both. That way I can get a good weld in there and not be too tight. That way we get 100%. All right, got set up on the other side. Got some fire blanket to protect the windshield. And this stuff, it really comes in handy. It comes in a roll, you can get it. We used to use it when I worked in the refineries. Does a pretty good job of protecting this stuff from catching on fire or messing up windshields and glass. This one's gonna be a little harder to access. Got the cab here in the way, and there's gonna be the big balls of metal that's coming off. We try to position the stub bucket underneath to catch those, because even though it is the fire blanket, once that big old pile of metal creates, it will burn through the fire blanket and it actually will catch on fire. So that'll help sometimes if you can catch those big ones. nice, good deal. All right, here we are on the front, and as you saw, we just got that arc gouged out. The arc gouger wasn't ideal because I had to keep an upward angle, and you know the best way to throw the sparks is down, so it kind of wants to just don't act as good when you've got an angle and you're throwing the sparks this way. I didn't want to cut up that way and throw sparks back over there on the engine. So the gouging's a little messier up there than I like. We're gonna be able to get it cleaned up. We're gonna be able to use a grinder up until about this part probably, and then the grinder's gonna probably start hitting right there. We might have to get a burr bit to clean everything like we want. And I'm gonna go ahead and flat top this original weld. So we're gonna plate this when everything's said and done. But originally, I could have cut this with a torch, and I'm glad I didn't, because this is like a casted piece that Cat manufactures. This is just plate steel here. And the piece from factory has another, on the inside, it comes up into here. So there's like a backing in here. And if you were to try to cut this with a torch, say cut a bevel this way and then come back this way, which that's a good way to do it, it would have created a huge mess going through those double layers. And this right here, instead of having to fish a backing strip up in there, we went completely through. You can see the edge of this plate here, got it down to somewhat of a bevel. And there's backing in there, so we don't have to worry about trying to fish a backing strip in there or try to get an open root in that. And that would have been my first choice. If this didn't have the backing, I would have tried to make sure I didn't gouge a gap too wide, so I would be able to do an open root in there instead of having to fish a backing strip. The thing with fishing the backing strips in there, it's a great process. We used it, but you have to get your gap wide enough to get the backing strip in there, and that's just extra metal you're having to put on something. So we're gonna try to give that a little more reinforcement with a plate. We're not gonna be able to get our plate up in here as much as I'm gonna like, just because of the weldability, and it's not worth separating this thing and scoping the boom out to do all this. So I think our repair will get them on down the road plenty long enough. All right, I've been wanting to kind of go over some grinding stuff for a little while. I find grinding to be a huge part of what I do. I feel like it's a very underestimated skill set. I don't mind grinding. I've kind of become to like grinding, but one thing, I've worked with a lot of companies over the years that skimped out on grinding disc, and I understand completely why. You get good stuff, it just goes home with everybody. 3M Cubitrons, by far best product out there as far as abrasives. I used Norton disc for a little while and recently swapped over to these Cubitron 3s. I've used the Cubitron 2s for a while and couldn't find a good place to get them. So I just started buying the Norton stuff, but these 7-inch Cubitron 3s strictly all I buy. And then when it gets smaller, when we wear it down, we put it on a 4-inch. It makes it simple, but I don't know, they work great. They don't clog up. It's just a good, very, very good product. Now I'm gonna swap over to my little 4-inch, some smaller disc so I can get up a little higher. Then we'll have to do the rest with a burr. Got a clear lens in my bucket, caught on fire. That is one thing about the Cubitrons, they throw actual metal, big chunks, so they will catch a lot of stuff on fire if you're not careful. Hey, Caden.
What?
Hey, get me a end grinder with a burr bit on it.
All right, what kind? Square?
Yeah, see if you can find a short one with a blunt, one of those blunt ends. These square cut burr bits, they work really good. They're aggressive on the ends. They don't last long because the tips get broke off. But for getting in tight places like that and moving metal, the square cut ones definitely work the best. That's it over here. When you're grinding in bevels, if you want to work the bevel out, take your disc, instead of just putting it straight in, you can angle it this way and it'll work a bevel, and then you kind of redo it this way and it'll work the opposite side. It kind of works both sides at the same time. Here we'll finish it off with our little burr bit. This little block right here is just so I can get started on this bottom. You watching? Yeah. On a weld like this, you want to build like a shell. With stick rod, it works a lot better. You don't want to just run that first one up real fast. See that pressure coming out of there?
Yeah. You got that hammer? Yeah, there it is.
It's all right, I'm gonna keep on going. Right. That would never work with dual shield. I'm kind of doing that same motion I showed you a little bit.
Yeah, I was noticing that.
Because I got to get the metal up on this side over here I'm on now, and it's naturally not wanting to go. So I'm trying to force it over there. See how I'm kind of working back into it? Because if I just jumped up ahead of me, it's going to cut out a lot.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to put the metal where it's already at and let it flow up. If that makes any sense.
It's like you're pushing it up.
Yeah. That's stuff that you just can't do with wire.
Yeah.
It just don't work. Yeah, that bevel's getting kind of tight right there. You gotta be, see how I'm working the rod up? Making sure everything's blended. At this much of a vertical up, it's almost impossible to trap anything right there.
Yeah.
But you can kind of see how that tight bevel. And you can you could put more of a drag on it like that. And just let it soak in there like that. Oh, stick rod's slow, ain't it?
Oh, yeah. We ain't used to it, that's for sure.
It's good metal, though.
Yep.
It'll be gouging us back out when it's flux for.
Yeah, I was about to say.
There ain't no doubt.
By the time we either grounded or gouged it back out, this should have been way faster.
Out of all that cold lap, like right there, that'd be the only thing I'd be worried about. See that right there? See how bad that is? Which it still might go to the bottom, but all you gotta do is just kind of open it up. All that. It's awful, all that. All right, we on this other side. I've got one layer in it. Got it ground a little bit on that bottom where I had some cold lap. A little bit of cold lap. And got the second bead going in it. Once I get this bead in this one, I'm gonna swap over to dual shield. The wind's really calm right now. I got Caden setting up the feeder. The other side I flushed all the way out with stick rod, and the dual shield's gonna speed it up a little bit. We're gonna plate this, put a little reinforcement over it, and we're gonna definitely try to use a dual shield on that. The first pass of anything like this way I was talking about it having a backer in there, from factory, we didn't have to open it up all the way to an open root. So there was what you would call a seam, and any time in my experience I've ever tried to gouge and weld up a seam on old equipment, stuff that's been in service, it just doesn't work. There's pressure in there that's coming out in between that seam, and it does not allow you to put in a good weld with dual shield. It'll be full of wormholes, and it's just very, very frustrating. So at least always, I always put in the first layer with stick rod, and then once we get a couple layers in it, sometimes we'll swap over to dual shield, weather permitting, but it's always case by case. It's never this is the only way you can do it. There's always multiple ways, and it always depends on the situation and conditions. All right, here we're fixing to cut the holes for 2 plug welds on our fish plate. We're just going to use our circle burner on our torch for that. All right, Caden's finishing up grinding our reinforcement plates. We've got the weld completely slicked off. We went ahead and took the factory weld off, so our reinforcement plates sat on there good and tight. And these are the fiber discs that we use a lot, and we don't use these for everything, but for removing welds, doing processes like this, these right here will outperform a grinding disc. They just cut. They don't really glaze up. They work really well, and when we're grinding around equipment, they don't throw sparks from here to the end of this boom. So a lot less likely to catch stuff on fire with these. And just to show you that this is not this is the disc. I call this wore out. It quit cutting like I liked it, so I got a new one. And this is what you're left with. These are metal shavings. This is not grinding dust. This is metal shavings that those discs put out. So I don't use Tiger disc at all. I use fiber disc and hard rocks. That's all I use for angle grinders. All right, we got everything welded up. I'm gonna do a little bit of grinding on some of the tacks and get finished dressing everything up. Got everything finished up, put a little paint on there. We went ahead and added a reinforcement plate. We don't always add reinforcement plates. It really just depends on the situation and the type of stress involved in that area. These cat loaders are bad about this, so we wanted to add a little bit of extra reinforcement and not rely solely on the weld right there in that particular area. This side over here was a little more challenging because we had the cab in the way. We were able to do all the welding on the crack itself with the boom laid down, and we just lifted the boom straight up in the air and turned this weld into an overhead, and I was able to get back in there and weld it up pretty easy. We welded the crack up for the most part with 7018, swapped over to dual shield a little bit on this side because I ended up making these bevels a little bit wider, speed it up. All the reinforcement plates were welded on with dual shield except for the top of this one right here. Sometimes when your nozzle doesn't fit in there right, it'll act funky, and I got porosity for the first couple inches, so I just swapped over to make the frustration levels a little bit lower. About to finish wrapping up here. Use our rocket canopy again. So far Couldn't be happier with it. We had the umbrella set up here. It was plenty of shade for the most part on this side of things, but an umbrella and a big tent seems to be the ticket for most things. I hope y'all enjoy these longer videos. We're going to do our best to keep putting them out there in the long content form and posting them here on YouTube. So y'all stay tuned.